I was gonna feud the entire swath of King Kong movies from the original 1933 through today's Kong Skull Island, but after doing some recent classic feuds and seeing the view count, it's determined that kids don't give a fuck if the movie's older than 20 years. This episode's rated PG-13, so I get the obligatory one swear word for edginess. Let's get started with the feud. It is amazing how different Peter Jackson's King Kong feels to the Kong Skull Island film, but there is a lot of character similarities, so we can break those down pretty easy. The Kong love interest, if you will, is far more fleshed out in 05's version. And as it should be, the movie is like 72 hours long. Academy Award nominee Naomi Watts plays actress Ann Darrow, who is also the lead in the 1933 version. Everything about Jackson's film is a love letter to the original, including the way the actors play their roles. There is an old-school Broadway-esque feel to it all, and Naomi Watts can do one hell of a scream. Personally, I think it's the best in the business, and her connection with the King of the Jungle is sincere and well-performed. On the flip side is Oscar winner Brie Larson, who is almost completely useless here. She gets maybe 2 minutes of screen time with Kong to establish some sort of bond. It's not earned, and the actress deserved better. She spends a vast majority of the time looking beautiful and taking photos with her Kodak camera. Her muscle T companion, Tom Hiddleston, steps into the action role here, but it's a far cry from the fantastic work he did as the villain Loki in the Avengers and Thor flicks. Here he's very generic. And the same can be said for the even more bizarre casting of Adrian Brody as Jack Driscoll. I think Peter Jackson went out of his way to cast actors in odd roles. Jack Black as movie maker Carl Denham was an interesting choice. And I did end up being sold on his character, even though early on in the flick I kept waiting for him to do a comical pratfall. I mean, he's no John Goodman, though once more, Black gets far more screen time for his character to grow. Goodman has very little to work with, which is a damn shame as he's a top-tier actor. And with pretty much every movie in existence, Samuel L. Jackson is in here. Hell-bent on revenge, ignoring logic and reason at all turns. The big surprise came from John C. Reilly, who I expected to be a generic comic relief persona. And while he was funny, it made sense within the context of the character. And it was a nice contrast from the rest of the drab cast. He had the biggest arc in the flick too, and I found myself really only caring about his safety. I mean, I was concerned for the Kodak camera. She took so many good pictures with that thing. Both films also feature the red shirts, who get some backstory before inevitably dying horrifically. But let's get to the eighth wonder of the world himself, Kong. Jackson's version of the King seems far more animalistic and ape-like. And that's not just thanks to the directing, but also from go-to motion capture actor Andy Serkis. Kong is believable, and you grow to love him very early on. 2017's version is pretty awesome, but not nearly as fleshed out. He's pretty much just a badass giant ape with little layer to him. And while that's gonna be fine for most moviegoers, it's not for me. I wanna be tugged at, right here. And down there. 05's film is basically one masturbatory session over the 1933 flick. I think I mentioned the movie's length, which honestly is my only big problem with it. And Jackson has notoriously long flicks. The Lord of the Rings movies, if you get the proper versions, are over 3 hours each. The difference is, there was enough story there to push these films further. Kong feels closer to the Hobbit movies in terms of substance. There just isn't enough material to justify such an extended journey. It takes damn near an hour for the protagonist to even hit the island. This problem is avoided in Kong with a much more comfortable runtime. Kong Skull Island has more of your typical action-y vibe. I did dig some of the character designs, especially the giant spiders and the camouflaged insects. This is camouflaged insects. Then again, King Kong has perhaps the best disgusting insect scene I can recall, and it goes on for quite a while. Much like the last Godzilla film, there is a lack of focus on the title character. I think 05 made it very clear that this is a story about Ann and Kong's friendship. Skull Island can't quite decide who its focus is on. I will say this about Samuel L. Jackson's character. Shame on you, sir, for getting mad at Kong after you guys went in and nuked half of his island. Of course he's gonna retaliate. He's fighting for his land. He's fighting for his right to survive, to be free, to prosper, to live. And you think you can just come in there and destroy half his land and take his freedoms away? Shame on you. How hypocritical can you be, Preston Packard? I'm not going to call you by your rank. No, you lost that privilege long ago when you lost my respect. What the hell am I doing? Who am I talking to even? This is a fictional character. Let's move on. Indie director Jordan Vogt-Roberts, I'm not sure if that's how you say it, but he has a good eye for detail. Beautiful cinematography in Skull Island. I loved the 1970s era he puts the story in. The film has a very vintage feel, especially in the front half. In fact, the first half of the film is pretty damn terrific. It isn't until those skull raper creature things come into play that things get real dumb, real fast. The action is fun though for the most part. Highlights for me include Kong eating a giant octopus and throwing a boat motor into one of those dumb looking skull things. Disappointed he didn't break the thing's jaw clear off though. Fortunately, we get enough of that in King Kong as he battles a couple of V-Rexes while flipping Anne around like a rag doll. She would surely have died countless times, but since the movie is already so intentionally campy, it's hard to criticize. Another highlight for me comes from a silly dinosaur stampede with terrible green screen effects. By far the winner for the dumbest, cheesiest moment award though comes from my boy Loki, as he's in slow motion 300 style catching a katana and slicing through bat creatures as the camera follows along in the action. It is so freaking stupid. And I was in the theater like an 11-year-old YouTube commenter going, cringy! And I look at my wife and my wife's like, so much cringe! James Newton Howard composes a nice symphony of sounds, very much in line with the story being told. It's a very emotional soundtrack, complete with a full choir at times. And Henry Jackman scored the shit out of Skull Island as well. I think it actually carries the flick at times, especially during an awesome helicopter attack when we first reach the island.
What the hell is that?
I remember seeing 2005's King Kong in theaters when I was a teenage boy, and that feeling I had, that odd sensation when a teardrop rolled down the side of my cheek, just a single one, a manly teardrop. And I thought, wow, what a powerful film. Then I saw it a second time, and I thought to myself, how nice is it to be a stupid teenager with disposable income and no real cares in the world. I still enjoyed it a lot. I left Skull Island with a different reaction. Wasn't too shabby. Could have been worse. I didn't stay for the post-credits scene. I knew there'd be one. I knew it'd be a cock tease of Godzilla because obviously Universal wants these two monsters to collide, and this is a shared universe. Everything has to be now. We have to go for that next $500 billion, budget movie. But I'm gonna pose a big question to you now. Do you give a shit who wins? Did you get invested in Godzilla or Kong in the recent flicks? Or are you basing your hype and excitement off legacy? I'm guessing it's the former, and that should tell you everything you need to know about this feud. King Kong may be too long, but it has substance. It has emotions outside of that was badass. I give you my one-sided opinion, and now it's your turn. Comment, vote, and remember, this is more than just reviews. This is Movie Feuds. And stick around, kids. I got some fun stuff coming up, including me bashing the living hell out of the live-action Beauty and the Beast movie, because things from my era were better. They were better.